I'm going to use the standard 640 by 480 under character animation. And you'll remember that that means it's going to be 640 pixels wide and 480 pixels tall. And the frame rate, of course, is going to be 24 frames per second. So I'm going to go ahead and create that and open it up. And one of the things that we're going to be doing today is we're going to be creating objects and putting them into our library and then bringing them onto the stage. So we've got the stage here, we've got our tools, and I'm going to go ahead and move this over a little bit just so that I can maybe make my screen a little bigger and maybe we can see this a little better. So this is my 640 by 480. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm on layer 1 and I'm going to go ahead and create a shape. So I'm going to create the just a square. And remember that if I grab my selection tool and I click on it and I come over here to the properties palette, I can adjust the color. Now remember that when it's a shape, not an object, or not a symbol rather, when it's a shape, it has this kind of dot pattern in it, in the coloring. So that's like one of your clues that it is still an object and not a symbol. So while it's selected, I can come over here and I can choose a different color. And in this case, I'm just going to choose this. And one of the other things that's kind of cool is when we're going to create this symbol, I'm going to make this not just a regular cube. I'm going to add some details to it. So maybe I'll do this and I'm going to do this. Now, I'm doing this on purpose so you can see what happens when objects intersect with each other. So I'm drawing a shape that has a red fill and a white stroke. So it's kind of looking like a present, and that's actually what I'm going for. So let's take our selection tool and let's see what happens if we try to select individual pieces. I can select that, but look, because I drew a shape over another shape, it essentially is like punching through. So instead of having that full rectangle that you would have seen just a minute ago that I drew by itself, when I crossed it with another rectangle, I now have different sections. And that is exactly what has happened to the rest of the box. But here's the interesting thing. That means that I could grab and move this piece away. So if I was drawing something and I wanted kind of a complicated shape or something like that, I could, in my mind, I could think about the concept of these shapes like eating into each other. So, and I think if I try to click on the line, that is also its own shape. So for example, I could change the color of the stroke to black, right? And I could do the same thing here and here, and I could hold down the shift key and select multiple items. So I'll do that and that and that and that. Now, of course, I should probably select the outside piece. And I'm going to do this, see if I can get it. Oh, there isn't an outside piece over here. So I'll leave that off over here. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and hit my stroke color and change that color. Now, this isn't a great looking shape. It'll do. I'm going to go ahead and come back and draw a surrounding box around it. And this time, I want to have no fill. So while I have the tool selected, while I have the rectangle tool selected, I'm going to go ahead and basically select nothing. If you see, it's like right there. So I've got nothing, and I'm going to go ahead and draw my box. Now the cool thing is while I draw that, I can select that stroke, and let's just say, for example, if I select all these pieces, it's just going to take me a second to select them. Now I've got all of them. I can adjust the size of that stroke. And you'll see that it's kind of rounding the corners and everything. And we'll get into like how you can adjust some of those preferences. But anyways, so now I've got the corners. And I think I'm going to select this. And I'm going to change the color of the fill. to something like that. I guess I still have that Christmas spirit. I could put a ribbon on top, so let's see how that works. I'm going to go ahead and draw or grab my classic brush tool. Now I understand that you'll probably, drawing with the mouse is no fun. When we're in class and we have our Wacom tablets and all that stuff, it'll be a lot better. But what I can do is I can adjust the brush tool. You know, I can grab it and I can hit the tool properties over here, and I can adjust the size of the brush. So I can make it really small or really large. Of course, I probably want to have it be about that size. And what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and I've got my fill as that gray. So I'm going to go ahead and make it black. And I'm going to, whoops, shrink up the size a little bit. We'll talk later about when we get into drawing characters and everything in Adobe Animate. We'll talk about the smoothing and creating like using a pen that has like a variable width, but we're not going to mess with that right now. So this is really bad, and I apologize. That can be my ribbon. So I selected it, and I've got the, while it's together, that's cool. I can come over here and I could make this its own symbol, but I don't want to do that right now. So I'm just going to drag it over and plop it here on top. And I didn't have a fill when I drew it, so I'm going to have to kind of make do with what I've got. So there we go. And now that's my shape. Pretty bad looking, but that's what we've got. So I'm going to select all of this. And while it's selected and everything is highlighted, I'm going to say modify, convert to a symbol. And I want you to remember that when you're drawing with the shape tools or with the pen tool, you're basically creating objects. When you create a symbol, when you convert those objects to a symbol, they're essentially not really editable anymore. But as I mentioned before, you can, they'll be in your library and you can use them over and over and over again. So I'm going to go ahead and say convert to symbol. Now, depending on how your computer is, usually it's usually set, the default is a movie clip. This one isn't going to be a movie clip, but we're going to go ahead and make it a graphic. And we're not going to make it a button because that literally will be like an on and off state and those kind of things. So I'm going to make it a graphic and I'm going to call it present. Now the other thing is, you see where the registration, that means like where it's going to take your measurements from, like, or like where the position is. So I usually want everything to be like off the center. So I just click it there and it's going to put it in my library. If we click on the advanced, those are things that you're going to want to use, like if you're using some complicated action script and everything. While we're doing animation, we're not going to be using any of that stuff. So the defaults are fine. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And it is now a symbol. And one of the ways you can tell that it's a symbol is that, it's not, grayed out anymore. And there's my registration point in the center. So now that I've done that, I can delete it. Doesn't matter because I've got it here in the library. And again, I can place as many as I want. I can scale them, however I want by clicking on the transform tool or the free transform tool. And again, if I want to scale it in proportion, I need to hold down the shift key. If I don't want to scale it in proportion, don't hold down the shift key. So I'm going to scale that down. And there we go. So I'm going to actually though, I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I'm going to use it in just a second. So the next thing that I'm going to draw is I'm going to try to draw a Christmas tree. So, and if you think the present looked bad, wait till you see the Christmas tree. So again, I'm grabbing the classic brush tool. I'm coming to my stage. I'm going to go back to my properties and I am going to create this, and let's see, I'll go ahead and I'm going to try to do half of a tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it and paste it. And I've got to be careful because remember that when you overlap different objects, they're going to, where they intersect, they're going to cut. So I need to make sure that when I paste it, Command C, Command V, copy and paste, I need to make sure that I don't accidentally overlap the tree and then like deselect it, because then I won't be able to move it all together. So while it's selected, I'm going to do this. And now that it's over there, I'm going to go modify and I'm going to transform it and I'm going to flip it horizontally. And now I'm going to try to move it. And hey, look at that. That's not too bad. Now what happens when I select it all? It's all one piece because remember they overlapped, they merged together. So I've got that. Now I could and actually should fill this in with a color, right? So I'm going to fill it in with my paint bucket tool, which is right over here on my tools. And I can choose, whoops, I'm going to deselect this. I'm going to grab my paint bucket tool and I'm going to pick a color. But you know what? I'm going to pick a weird color because it's my tree. Well, actually, that's not too weird, but I'm going to use that. So using my paint bucket tool, it fills it in, right? No, your monitor isn't wrong. That is a weirdly colored tree, but it's festive. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, I'm going to put some ornaments on it, right? So I'm going to grab my click and hold on my rectangle tool and use my oval tool. And I'm going to come back here and I'm going to change the fill to something like this. And I'm going to make the stroke only like 2 points. So I can hold down my shift key to make a circle. If I don't hold down the shift key, I can make an oval. In this case, I'm just going to hold down my shift key and make, whoops, I don't like that one. Make a few ornaments. And I know what you're saying. This is looking like a nightmare, and it is. So I'm going to click down here. And the next thing I want to do is I want to make a star on the top. So by clicking and holding, I can select the Polystar tool. Excuse me. And then what I can do is I'm going to go to my properties, Polystar, and let's see what happens if I just draw. It gives me a polygon, right? Because that's the default, a pentagon, a 5-sided polygon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to the tool options. Just like up here, I could adjust the color, I could adjust the stroke or whatever. But if I come down here, I can adjust the number of sides, but I can also adjust the point size of it. So let's go ahead and let's see what happens if we say, go to a star, and I'll keep it a 5-sided star. So I just click down. You can either do a polygon or a star. I'm going to do a star. That star doesn't look too bad. So what I'm going to do is create it over here, make sure it's relatively straight. Yeah, we'll go with it. And I'm going to come back to my select tool, do this, grab this, and plop it right here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab all these, and I'm going to say modify, convert to symbol, and then I'm going to keep it a graphic, and I'm going to call it tree. And again, I can delete it because I now have it in my library. So this is where we go from here. So now I'm ready to start animating. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on layer 1, this is going to be my background layer. I'm going to create a floor just like I did before. And this is a little bit of a cheat, but I can live with it because I just want it to be something simple. So I'll make my, I don't know, maybe something like this. And I'll draw my rectangle for my floor. But you know what? I don't think, well, yeah, it's fine. I was going to say I don't like the line around it, but actually if I draw it a little bit outside, the only line we're going to see is the line right here on the floor. I can live with that. So now I'm going to come to my library. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click this. I'm going to call this the floor. And I'm going to lock it. I'm going to just click on the lock. Now I won't accidentally select it over and over again, and it's not going to get in my way. So now let's go to my library, and I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call it tree. And I'm going to put my tree in. I can just drag and drop it. And remember, because it is a symbol, I can scale it and do whatever. I think I like it the way it is. Now, this is what's kind of interesting. If I don't like the bottom of this tree, I can move it somewhat like this. And then, just like in Photoshop, the layers in Animate can be on top of one another. They can be underneath it. So if I wanted to cover up the bottom of that tree, all I have to do is move the floor layer above the tree. And then there we go. So that works pretty well. Okay, so now I have my floor layer, my tree layer, and I'm going to make my first present layer. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to drag in my first present. So I'm going to scale it down because I have the free transform tool selected, holding down the shift key, and I'm going to scale it. And I'm going to put it off the page. I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to put in another present. And I'm going to keep it here. Create another layer. I'm going to create another present, make it maybe a tiny one. And move it off. And then I'm going to come and create another layer. I should be naming them, but I know they're all present layers. And I'm going to move this over here. So now basically I have 1, 2, 3, 4 presents, and I'm going to have them come in. So I'm going to go ahead and basically, as I mentioned before, I can select these frames with the shift key and insert a keyframe for all of them. So now, if we go through, we can see that on this, there's the selections. Now, one thing that's kind of cool that I did not show you the other day is not only can we affect the position, that, for example, if this thing is here on the key on frame 1 and it's here on frame 72, well then yeah. If I were to insert a motion tween, it would be here at the end, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to undo it. Or rather, I don't want to do it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and select each one of these layers individually. So I'm going to click on the keyframe for layer 6. And on the end at 72, it's going to be here. And then on the keyframe for this one, it's going to be here. The keyframe for layer 8, and it's highlighting it for me. It's going to come over here to this side. And the keyframe for layer 9, it's going to be over here, which is cool. Now, what I'm going to do is, I want these presents to actually fade in instead of just popping in, sliding in, and all that stuff. So I'm going to go back to my initial keyframe, and I'm going to select layer 6. And of course, I'm clicking over here on the end because I want to get the very first one. One thing that I didn't show you is in properties, because it is a symbol and not an object, I can easily control the color effects. Now, one of the definitions I did not give you the other day is alpha channel. And alpha means the opacity or transparency or lightness of an image or of an object, symbol thing. So if I come here to color effects and I adjust my alpha, so I'm going to hold on that for a second. So you see I'm in properties. I have this selected. I'm in the properties, color effects, alpha. You'll see that 100% alpha means it's completely visible. If I slide this down, it's invisible. However, on this frame, it isn't invisible. So I'm going to come back here. Also, one thing that's really cool, since each one of these frames only has one object on it, you see that when I made layer 6, when I changed the alpha to 0 and made it like invisible, the dot signifying the keyframe went from being black to white, because Animate wants you to know that even though you can't see it, there's something on that layer. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to do the same thing, color effects, alpha 0. And you see that it pre-populated the 0 because that was the last alpha that I used. So I'm going to come here to layer 8 and it's already populating it. And I can go color effects alpha 0. And I can come here to layer 9, select that object and go color effects alpha 0. And so now they should fade in when I click here on the timeline and say insert, create classic tween. And I go to the next one, insert, create classic tween, insert, create classic tween, insert, create classic tween. And so now if I move my playhead across, this is what's going to happen. You're going to fade in and be there. And if I wanted to get kind of really weird with it, I could actually unlock my tree file, or rather my tree layer, and I could also select that and say alpha 0. So now, if I click in here in the tree timeline, and I say insert, create classic tween, now it's blank, but when everything comes together, boom, you know, we're in good shape. Now, I'm going to play this for you. It's going to come together, and there it is. But it's actually going to end right there. That'll be the end of the animation. If I wanted to have a thing where maybe it says Merry Christmas or something like that, I can add keyframes here by holding down the Shift key and create a keyframe. And now it's going to animate, and then it's going to hold for another 1.5 seconds, it looks like. Maybe 1.25 seconds. So it's there. And that's pretty cool. Now, the other thing that I can do is I can use and create type in here. So I'm going to come up to layer 9 and I'm going to say create new layer. And I'm going to click down, and it's spinning because it's loading all the fonts and everything. And I can click down and I can say happy holidays. I can't believe I'm doing this design in January. But anyways, I can select this, and over here in the properties, now remember, if you're in the library or if you're in your assets, you're not going to be able to see this. You have to click on properties, and then we can change the font to basically whatever's on the system. You're probably not going to have a lot of them. Whoa, that's really weird looking. Let's see what else we got. I don't want it to be too, that looks good. And you can adjust the size of it. Actually, if you put your cursor in there, and if you have the ability, if you have like a trackpad or a touchpad mouse, we can adjust the size. We can make it larger. Or the easiest thing to do is, or an easier thing to do would be to just convert it to a shape and like scale it up and all this other stuff. But that's fine, because what I really want to do is, now that I'm looking at it, I don't like the way these things are touching, but I bet if I, now the other thing that I'm going to do is, I probably should have adjusted the color, but I can also change it in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this type to a symbol, because I have to, or else I'm not going to be able to do the things that I want to do. So I'm going to change the color real quick. And I can do that by going to the fill and changing it to that. So really doesn't look great, but it'll work. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go modify, convert to symbol, and I just want to have it be a graphic, and I'll say we'll call it happy. We'll just call it happy. So there it is. So if I come here, I don't want it to be there the whole time. So all I have to do is click on the keyframe of that timeline and drag it to where I do want it to be, which is here. I want it to start there. So it's not there, and then it is there. So I need to put a keyframe at the end, and at the beginning, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to do my color effects alpha. And I'm going to start off here, and then actually, I kind of want it to go to 100 quicker. So I'm going to insert a keyframe here. And on this part, I'm going to have it be 100%. So now all I have to do is come to here, which is now I've got a keyframe and a keyframe. Tiny little section, but I'm going to go insert, create classic tween. And because I have the rest of this, I'm going to have to go, now I'm going to have to change this to alpha 100. Wait a minute, why am I doing that? Okay. So now that I've got the alpha at 0 in this frame and the alpha at 100 in this frame, all I have to do is click in the middle, and I can say insert, create classic tween. Boy, I don't like the way that font is working out. But anyways, so there we go. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this way because I want it to turn 100% a lot faster. So it's going to go like that. And then I'll just put another keyframe right here. And so now if we play this animation, it looks like that. And we're done. So I'm going to save it. And now you're going to wonder, well, how am I going to turn this in? How am I going to export it or do whatever? So what you want to do is you're going to go to File, Export. And you can export it as an image, export it as a movie, whatever. One of the ways that we're going to do it, we can export it as an animated GIF. Now, when I do that, it's going to spin for a second. And when you do it, it's going to do the same thing. And what it's going to literally do is it's going to convert it, convert all the stuff that we just did into an animated GIF. So, whoops. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to play. And there you go. The difference is I don't want it to loop. I want it to play once. So over here, under looping, I'm going to say once. So it's going to play one time. And size-wise, it looks pretty good. Let's see, 100%. Yeah, that's not bad at all. If I go to, that's the optimized. Here's the original optimized, and even gives you like choices. So I'm going to go to optimized, and I'm going to save it. And it's Troxel Flying Presence, and it's on the desktop. So it's going to churn through. So now that I've exported it as a GIF, I'm going to go ahead and hide this. And just to test it, if you're on a Mac, I can just select the file. Here's the file, and hold the space bar, and it's going to show me, you know, the animation. Or I can go to a browser, and I can go File, Open, and go to the desktop. And there's my flying presence. And there it is right there. And that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. So basically what I want you guys to do is to create an animation that has multiple layers and multiple objects. And I would like it if you draw those objects, well, I wouldn't like it, you have to. Draw those objects, convert each individual object to a symbol, just like I did, so that you have it in your library, and then you can drag and drop it into your stage. We want to keep it at that 640 by 480 and the standard settings, 24 frames per second, stuff like that. And that way it won't be too unwieldy and hard to manage. But you definitely want to have like a background and then different images layered on top of it. I do want you to show motion, and I would like you to do an alpha channel edit on at least one of your objects. And the sky's the limit. So you can draw whatever you want, or you can, you know, you can draw circles and squares and triangles. That's fine. Just make an interesting animation. So what you're going to do is then you're going to export it as a GIF, and you're going to copy that GIF up to me in the assignment where you got this video link from. So if you have any questions, you should have my number. You can call me. I'm sorry, don't call me. You can text me. But otherwise, just do your best, be creative, but don't bite off more than you can chew. What I would do is I would do something simple. And then maybe if you can do the simple thing really fast, make sure all that kind of stuff works, make sure that you can export it, then you can go back and do something a little more complicated. So just have it turned in today by the end of class, and then we'll take a look at them tomorrow. And I know that there's people that are taking SOLs, and there's not a lot of people that are going to be here, but we'll make it work. So thanks and good luck.